Nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains, my cabin had always been my sanctuary. Tucked away from the chaos of the city, it was a place of peace, reflection, and pine-scented air. I'd inherited the cabin from my grandfather, a proud veteran who built it with his own 2 hands. Though rustic, it had character. Cedar walls, a stone chimney, and a porch that overlooked the valley. But peace was growing rarer these days. Ever since the new president of the Homeowners Association moved in next door, her name was Karen Whitmore. And yes, she was the very embodiment of the meme. With a short blonde bob and an omnipresent frown, Karen took her self-appointed title of neighborhood overseer more seriously than the average police chief. Since she'd become HOA president, she'd fine me for unauthorized bird feeders, demanded I repaint my barn red siding to match community color code, and even complained when I parked my pickup truck facing the wrong direction. In my own driveway, but nothing compared to what happened last Labor Day weekend, I had invited a dear friend up to the cabin for a long overdue retreat. His name was William Bill Torrance, a former senator from my home state and a lifelong friend of the family. Despite his notoriety in political circles, Bill was refreshingly down-earth. We shared stories over bourbon on the porch, cooked steaks over a fire pit, and spent the evening catching up like the old souls we were. I had no idea that my quiet gathering would soon become the center of a scandal. I'm an HOA nightmare. It started innocently enough. Bill arrived around noon, driving an older but impeccably maintained black Range Rover. He wore jeans, a leather jacket, and aviators, not exactly what you'd expect from a former senator, but that's what made him so likable. As we unloaded his bags and firewood, I noticed Karen peeking through her blinds. 15 minutes later, she was on my property. "Excuse me?" she shouted, storming up the gravel path in her white sneakers, clipboard in hand. Bill, ever the gentleman, turned and smiled. "Afternoon, ma'am." Karen ignored him and locked eyes with me. "You didn't submit a guest form for this man?" It blinked. "A guest form? Karen, this is my private property. You're part of Ridgeview Pines community. All overnight guests must be approved by the board. It's protocol. He's staying for the weekend. It's Labor Day. I don't need your permission to have a guest in my yard." She sniffed and turned to Bill. "May I see some ID?" Bill raised an eyebrow. "Is that really necessary?" "You're trespassing," Karen snapped. "If I don't see ID, I'm calling the sheriff." Now, Bill could have flexed his status. Right then and there, he could have dropped the senator card and had her running scared. But he was too humble for that. Instead, he chuckled and said, "I'm here at the invitation of my friend." "You really want to call the police over this?" Karen didn't hesitate. She whipped out her phone and within seconds was speaking to a 911 dispatcher, her voice dripping with faux concern. "Yes, hello. I need to report a suspicious person." "At 123 Pine Hollow Drive." "Yes, he's in the yard." "No, he refuses to identify himself." "Yes, African-American male, mid-60s, large build." I froze. The yard went silent. Bill's face hardened. Karen hung up and smiled smugly. "Be here shortly." Felt rage bubbling inside me. "Karen, you just described one of the most respected public servants in the country as a criminal." "He wouldn't show ID," she said flatly. "That's suspicious behavior. We have to follow the rules." "Those rules are racist and unconstitutional," I snapped. "And you just made the biggest mistake of your HOA career." She scoffed and retreated to her porch, where she waited with folded arms like a hawk awaiting its prey. 15 minutes later, 2 sheriff's deputies rolled up the mountain road, lights on, but no sirens. They stepped out cautiously, scanning the area. Bill stood calmly on the porch, arms folded as I approached them. "Afternoon, officers. Everything all right?" I asked. One of them, Deputy Monroe, nodded. "We got a call about a possible trespasser. That's my guest, Bill Torrance. He's a former U.S. Senator." Monroe glanced at Bill, then did a double take. "Wait, Senator Torrance?" Bill nodded and extended a hand. "Pleasure to meet you, Deputy." Karen appeared out of nowhere. "There he is. That's the man I told you about. He refused to show ID and was acting hostile." Monroe looked at her with thinly veiled irritation. "Ma'am, we recognize." "Mr. Torrance?" He's not trespassing. It's clearly here with the homeowner. Karen's face fell. But he didn't follow protocol, the second deputy chimed in. This isn't an HOA issue. This is a misuse of emergency services. You called 911 for a non-criminal matter, Karen sputtered, her face going red. I was protecting our community. Bill stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. Ma'am, what you did was not only unnecessary, it was dangerous. You made a false report that could have ended in tragedy. The officers exchanged glances. Senator, would you like to file a report? Monroe asked. Bill shook his head. Not today, but I will be speaking to the county commissioner and the HOA board about this. Karen turned and stormed back to her house, slamming the door behind her. The officers apologized for the inconvenience and left. That night, Bill and I sat on the porch, the crickets loud in the quiet evening. I've had worse encounters, he said, sipping his bourbon. But this one stings more than usual. She had no right to treat you that way, he nodded. People like that abuse their tiny bits of power to control others. That's why I got into public service, to fight that mindset. The next day, Bill made a few phone calls. Word traveled fast. Within a week, Karen was the talk of the town. The local news picked up the story after an anonymous tip, which may or may not have come from me. Headlines read, Senator racially profiled by HOA president in gated mountain community. The HOA board held an emergency meeting. Neighbors were outraged not because of Karen's usual antics, but because she had embarrassed them on a national scale. By the end of the month, Karen was forced to resign as HOA president. A formal apology was issued to Bill Torrance by the HOA, the sheriff's department, and the county commissioner. The 911 dispatcher filed an internal report citing misuse of emergency services. Karen was fined for the false call. It didn't end there. Senator Torrance was later invited to speak at the town hall, where he delivered a powerful speech on community, prejudice, and the dangers of weaponizing authority. His words resonated. Power, he said, whether granted by a title, a clipboard, or a set of community rules, must be wielded with humility. When it's used to divide instead of protect, we lose the very spirit of what makes a community thrive. He received a standing ovation. As for me, I still live in my cabin in the woods. Bill visits every now and then, and the neighbors are a lot friendlier these days. Karen sold her house quietly and moved out under the cover of embarrassment. Say she's trying to run another HOA somewhere downstate. I pity them. But the real victory? My bird feeders are still up. My fire pit is burning. My guests, regardless of what they look like or who they are always welcome. And I never filled out a guest form again,